Friends, we have come to this place of learning as pilgrims with anticipation and perhaps some trepidation. To haunt the same spaces as masters of letters and history, philosophy and ethics, science and divinity, to be in the presence of Shelley and Auden, Lewis and Tolkien, Carroll and Eliot. It is awesome and humbling, but so is being in the presence of you, students, faculty, friends, and family, gathered here and virtually together with the divine in whom we pray. Come close, be with us, and fill us with inspiration and delight, hope, and all goodness. Amen. Please be seated.
Thank you, Drew. Greetings to you here with us at St. Hugh's College at the University of Oxford in England, and to those watching us via Zoom in the United States and elsewhere. This includes our students attending residency virtually and graduating from the States. Welcome to the Alma College degree ceremony honoring the autumn 2025 recipients of the degree of Master of Fine Arts of Creative Writing. I am Sophronia Scott. I am the director of the program. On behalf of the Alma College administration, our trustees, our faculty, our families, and our many friends in the Alma community, it is my great pleasure to welcome all of you here today to celebrate the new graduates of this program, which happens to be Alma College's first graduate program in its 137-year history. I want to thank the staff here at St. Hugh's who have so attentively hosted us and fed us here at the college. We also have tremendous gratitude to the team at Grand Tourist, Janet Simmons, Lucy Simmons, and in absentia, Bilge Ackle, who have added to our educational experience here in Oxford by bringing us to inspiring spaces in both town and country, teaching us about these places and introducing us to writers who make their home in this beautiful area. And student Katarina Thomas, who assisted them where needed. I offer a big thank you to Joy Bilby, who graduated from the program in 2023, who joined us to assist with tech, even as she does right now. And she has ensured that our far-flung students and friends can be with us for the learning and now the celebration. I also thank Joey Meyer, who graduated from the program last year and yesterday delivered a brilliant lecture on artificial intelligence. Alumni such as Joy and Joey testified to the fact that the artistic community that exists within the Alma MFA is alive and ongoing, with our students supporting each other and collaborating with each other in relationships that continue long after they have graduated. What you will witness in this ceremony today is student created, adding their own touches to the traditions of Alma College to mark their love for and commitment to the program. For example, we process into bagpipers playing Loch Lomond, the song traditionally sung at Alma College commencement ceremonies. The lyrics, "Oh, you'll take the high road, and I'll take the low road, and I'll be in Scotland before ye. But me and my true love will never meet again on the bonny banks of Loch Lomond." Now you might wonder, what's going on with that? Why is this American school having bagpipes and Scottish music? Well, the college was founded by the Presbyterians, a faith community rooted in the Church of Scotland. We live our Scottish heritage loud and in plaid at Alma College. As you drive into the town of Alma, Michigan, you'll see a sign that says Scotland, USA. We have a bagpipe band. Our marching band wears kilts. The coach of our football team wears a kilt during games. We have a group called the Kilty Dancers, specializing in Highland dance. And we hold a Highland festival annually. Alma College even registered its very own pardon in 1999. We come by all this honorably. Occasionally, I will lead an informal writing retreat that involves similar travel, and I've been asked, what's the difference between that kind of trip and an Alma MFA residency? Lucy, who has experienced both, recognized the answer right away. She said, these writers aren't on holiday casually writing. These people are truly committed to the work. And she is absolutely correct. Our students spend 2 years overcoming the slings and arrows of the tumult that can be the modern everyday life to focus on what they have to say to the world and how they can write those words better. And perhaps make a difference for both the world at large and those closest to them. They attend a residency every 6 months, either traveling like this residency or on our campus at Alma College. And there they write, read, and work in community to develop and support their artistic lives. After each residency, they return home to put the learning into practice, writing regularly, reading deeply, and submitting packets of work to their advisors throughout the term. This means that we also need to thank the families of our graduates who have supported them in this serious endeavor. I like to say, and it's true, that because of you, they can soar. Now at this time, the graduating students will make their presentations.
So I have a brief piece to read to you all. It's one that many of you heard in the graduating reading. It's Appalachia. Appalachia. I am a child whose blood remembers the mountains. The old crooked man bent over with fangs. I do not whistle at night or outside, keep my curtains closed, leave things to be counted. I do not hear my name called, do not see the shadows in bedroom doorways, nor the labored breathing of my grandmother in the next room. She is already gone. The blood recalls things not spoken, for fear the name will bring them to your door. Beings made of ichor, suffering, and ancient things. For these mountains have no bones other than those that they've stolen. And this program will make a connection between all of us that is stronger and longer than trees, these mountains that connect with America and the United Isles, and perhaps even longer than sharks. They're very old. They're older than the rings of Saturn. Katerina, Sarah, would you like to continue?
I'm going to say a few words by Annie Diller on writing. At its best, the sensation of writing is that of any unmerited grace. It is handed to you, but only if you look for it. You search, you break your heart, your back, and your brain, and then, and only then, it is handed to you. From the corner of your eye, you see motion. Something is moving through the air and headed your way. It is a parcel bound in ribbons and bows. It has 2 white wings. It flies directly at you. You can read your name. If it were a baseball, you would hit it out of the park. It is that one pitch in 1,000 you see in slow motion. Its wings beat slowly as a horse. And I chose to share this because I feel it gets to the very heart of what we strive for, reach for, the place that we go as writers. And it's also about flights, about birds, and then we think of the beautiful doves outside the window. And it felt like a connection between baseball, something so American, reading here in Oxford, and just moving to state.
And we wanted to give you a gift Sonia, and for the community that you brought into being, that we are so grateful to be a part of, and for, in the words I believe, obtain, helping us all write better books.
He is my son.
Timing.
Yeah.
And it's from all of us, Kayla. Now we're going to antique shop here.
Is this a right book?
It's a Victorian desk tidy.
Love it. So much.
Thank you.
And it's been an honor of shepherding you on this fantastic voyage.
We're going to read to you our messages. We're going to place in a scroll of scrolls before we can pass it off on to another generation of writers. I don't know what I wrote in it. Oh no. It's okay, we promise I have a picture of it. Follow the birds. They carry stories in their beaks and hope under feathers. Sure. Actually, we have the inventor of the tree.
What? What?
So.
I didn't invent this.
It's and we would put messages in a bottle, so you'll see that on the program. It's essentially just graduates pass on a bit of wisdom to the next graduating class, which is a wonderful thing. A new program, and we were able to read all these messages in the past 5 years, 4 years. And so we're each doing that now, and then we'll choose someone from the next graduating class. Maybe the scroll, which is now scroll because we're international, so hard to carry a class. So, we've chosen someone to pass it on to the children.
I'll place my scroll over to the scroll. This is a poetry from Toni Morrison. As fleet and bright as a lodestar he wheeled, but now he knew what shone on you. If you surrendered to the air, to the right. All right, space again. This scroll is very full.
We get a bigger one.
Magna Cura. Then Kayla, I have Kayla's sleeve.
Is she gonna say it?
Am I gonna read mine? I can read it. Hear me?
Yes.
As writers, we're gifted with a deep emotional connection to the world. That connection, that understanding is our superpower, and our words are our weapons. Sharpen them, use them for good to vanquish evil.
I'm going to read a little bit about the person that we're going to give these scrolls to today. We have the honor of passing the scroll of scrolls on to a writer who exemplifies the fidelity to one's true guiding light and principal joy in reading alongside growth, and that it's possible for them to achieve this in Alma's MFA program. We've got to see them grow through their time here and feel that they know well the spiritual and otherworldly significance of a sacred scroll passed down through the line. We would like to give the scroll of scrolls and this cute little card that Sarah picked out for all of us, DJ.
While I am preparing here, Joy is going to pin two guest speakers that we will have here on screen. The Alma College MFA Book Award is being held in partnership with Running Wild Publishing, a small press whose books have been named Best of the Year by the Book Review magazine Critics Reviews. The winner of this, let me set that for a second. It is now my great pleasure to present the very first Alma MFA Book Award. So this book award is being held in partnership with Running Wild Publishing. They are a small press whose books have been named Best of the Year by the Book Review magazine Critics Reviews. The winner of this award is chosen solely from Alma MFA program students and alumni. The winner receives an upfront prize of $200 as well as a book contract with Running Wild. This is now an annual contest. Submissions commence from January to June. The editors of Running Wild have chosen the winners, whom we will announce today. We created the award because we want to give our students not only experience, but also powerful opportunities. Running Wild, which is well known in the publishing industry as a quality small press that looks for beautiful work and produces beautiful work, and they are looking for talented writers and exciting manuscripts. So this is a perfect partnership. So I will announce the winner, and we will have here, these are editors from Running Wild Press, Peter Wright, who is on the right, and Dr. Benjamin White, who will tell you why they chose the manuscript. And I will dig out this pretty hefty, okay. Okay, let's see what it's really cool. The winner of the 2025 Alma MFA Book Award is Mary Susan Peterson, graduate from 2023, for her manuscript, Planting Onions, Letters Written Out of a Season. And it will take a moment, Benjamin and Peter will tell us why they chose the book.
Hello. What I enjoyed most about the poems were their strong sense of yearning. Congratulations, Mary, of course, fantastic. Happy to award you the award this year. I like the strong sense of yearning in the poems. I saw the moon as a repetitive image, the sadness, the strength, and the loneliness. Light and the absence of light within the works. I love the interjections of the military life. It provided potential danger and enforced order amidst the beauty and the unstructured flow of the poems. Now, these are just my opinions. These are just my thoughts. But I was really taken by the strength and the power of the poetry that you wrote. So thank you for submitting and congratulations for winning.
I'm Ben White. I'm an acquisitions editor and an author at Running Wild Press, where basically we look for things that may not fit other places. And because we appreciate creativity for the storytelling aspects and of course the good writing aspects. So it was a nice process to go through the review of the entries that we had. And I think there were 6 altogether, but Mary stuck out as a process of construction to initially put it together and then deconstruct it into two separate parts and two separate entries. And now what we liked about that was the creative aspect of taking something that's totally together, splitting it apart, submitting it, and now we're looking forward to reconstructing it back into one piece. And which is a very creative thing that appealed to us at Running Wild Press. The aspects of the taking letters that are probably, you can imagine letters stored in a shoebox under a bed somewhere, and taking those letters and turning them into poems to capture the feeling from a personal meaning into a universal meaning was part of that poetry that Peter just talked about. And I personally call it a poemoir. I invented that genre until somebody with credibility comes along and takes it away from me. But it's a poemoir that uses poetry as a memoir. And so it's, again, through that construction, deconstruction, and reconstruction process, it just fits in Running Wild's mindset that there's more creativity than what we see in the traditional lanes. And we were very happy to get it. And I was, Mary, congratulations for winning, but really congratulations because I was selected as your editor last night. Peter and Lisa Kashner selected me to edit it. So you're a winner. You'll see. But congratulations, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you. When Sophronia let me know, she said, you'll have, be asked to say a few words of acceptance. So I hope this isn't too long. I'm done with speaking. First of all, congratulations to brilliant interns. And may my presence here be evidence that your experience that is on, because there I am. So being chosen for this award by Running Wild Press is a surprise. I don't win things. I'm grateful and excited that my work is recognized. I'm so happy my husband, Jim, is here with me. Lawyer, poet, right? Jim is a fabulous cook. He lets things marinate. Often do something marinating in our fridge and a mixture of complex ingredients that one might not be able to spell. Another Jim who is here, God bless him too, was my first mentor in the MFA program. I was pretty raw, didn't know a lot about seasoning with words. And I remember if I would write something that I felt was precious, Jim Daniels saying, maybe you want to let that one marinate for a while. So two Jims, knowing the value of marinate process. Planting onions, letters written out of season came from my learned willingness to let things marinate. I found a half box of letters that my dad had written to my mom, his then girlfriend, in 1951 and 52 from his time of service in the foxholes of the Korean War. So not only were the letters marinating in a closet for 70 years, but when I found my engagement with them and written responses to them became a marinating process for a new understanding of and a new way of writing about a father-daughter relationship that was virtually non-existent. The slow, often tearful engagement with these letters and the conversation I had with my dad after his death became a marinade for processing some changes in my life. To marinate, to allow something to sit, to seep, to rest in, and soak in the elements. To submerge, infuse, drown, dip something to improve the tenderness and flavor of a dish, of a story. Some things I needed to drown, some I could only dip. It is a personal note that I wrote most of the text, but thanks to the awesome. I have now gifted stories of my dad that I never knew, and a sense that our final goodbye was actually for us hello. and may it inspire some of your device. I never ever saw this coming. I never desired this connection. He would be 96 now. So I figure it took almost a century to a century. I don't win things in life. I struggle with patience. I have won an award and I've learned all kinds of patience. It's a twofer. So I read this line from Naomi Shihab to others in our very first poetry residency of the inaugural year, and I love them. It's late, but everything comes next. So thank you so much to all the mentors at Alma and Sophronia for cultivating a beautiful landscape where our writing, like onions, can grow. Thank you to Running Wild Press for this great opportunity. I'm so looking forward to seeing what comes together. For what comes next together. I'm not taking it back. I'm still going to Congratulations, getting married. It is now time for us to hear from our ceremony speaker, Dr. Nicholas Edwards. A graduate of Queen's College, Oxford, 1985, Nick holds a master's degree in medicine and trained as a hospital doctor in cardiology, general surgery, and emergency medicine, among other fields. He later transitioned into business consulting, where he has spent decades leading global transformation and innovation initiatives, particularly within healthcare and the pharmaceutical industry. With a long-standing interest in artificial intelligence and its applications in medical science, Nick has played a pivotal role in helping the University of Oxford academics bridge the gap between the academic and business worlds. His multidisciplinary approach has inspired innovation across sectors and supported the translation of research into real-world impact. Nick is an associate fellow of Green Templeton College, Oxford, where he is an active member of the Senior Common Room and a regular contributor to college life. Known for his clarity, wit, and engaging presence as a speaker, he brings a rare ability to make complex ideas accessible and relevant. His unique career path and deep ties to Oxford make him an ideal figure to help us reflect on our own journeys as writers, thinkers, and creators. Dr. Nicholas Edwards.
Well, thank you for that warm introduction. I hardly recognise the person you're describing. Well, they have struggled to live up to the high expectations you've created. I know when Janet wanted to find a speaker, she was very keen to find a really great speaker for you. So she asked the most intelligent person she knew, refused. She asked the most successful person she knew, refused. She asked the nicest person that she knew, refused. Anything came to me. And I thought I had to accept, since I've refused her 3 times already. I said, well, I'm going to do this, but what does he want me to do? She said, I'll talk about Oxford and be inspiring. And I thought, well, it's quite a challenge to be inspiring. But it did remind me of a friend of mine who gave a speech at a conference. When the conference was over, we were mixing with the speakers, and someone came up to him and said, I really liked your speech. It was so inspiring. Thank you very much. It's just that I'm a very nervous individual and a terrible public speaker. Clearly, you're the same, but it doesn't let it stop you. So, leaving aside the inspiration element, I'm very happy to talk to you about Oxford, which has meant a lot for me over many years. And I thought I would talk a little bit about how I came to be involved in Oxford, and why I think Oxford itself is a very inspiring institution. And I started off life in Liverpool. Janet and I were at school together, both came up to Oxford at the same time. And in fact, it's nice to be here in St Hugh's, I think, for the first time in 45 years. Because what I used to do, of course, these were pre-internet, pre-mobile phone, pre-social media times, is if I wanted to see Janet, I would walk all the way up here, go to her room and find that she was out. Maybe she walked all the way over to Queen's to find that I was out. And when you think back to how uncoordinated we were in those days, it was just a different world. And I first came to Oxford as a schoolboy in 1978. I thought, well, I'll have a go for Oxford. I arrived in Oxford, didn't know anything about the place, again, pre-social media, pre-internet, there's lots of information you can get hold of now, but in those days I didn't know where Queen's College was. I was walking along the high street going into colleges and saying, is this Queen's College? I said, no, it's down there. Eventually, I managed to find it. And it really did help me to open up a whole world of opportunities. I started off thinking I was going to do medicine, I was trying to read medicine, but then all sorts of things opened up for me because there were other people who were doing non-vocational degrees like history and architecture and archaeology. And yet when it came to graduation, suddenly they were being courted by different businesses. We had a thing called the Milk Ground, and people remember that, and it was also at Oxford, where the big companies would come along and say, come and work for us. Now, whether they were attracted by the brilliant educational standards of Oxford or the selection effect of people coming to Oxford, you could argue. But what it meant for me as a medical student, I suddenly saw this world opening up. Instead of going down that path of going into clinical medicine and becoming a doctor for the rest of my life, I thought, well, there are a lot of other things that I could do. And for a lad from Liverpool, I knew people from Liverpool could play football and sing pop music, but I wasn't very sporty and I wasn't very artistic. So to me, I kind of slipped into medicine, but then thought, what other things could I actually be doing with my life? I also have a very clear memory of the admissions interview 45 years ago. I can remember the room, I can remember the individual, I remember where I sat. Because the tradition in Oxford is you take some exams to get in, but then the tutor for your subject in your chosen college will interview you and assess you. And these are notoriously difficult examinations where they will try and ask you some really horrible, complex question. Like, when you look at a mirror, why is left and right switched but not up and down? What? And they're trying to put you in a difficult situation and challenge you. And I can very well remember the tutor for medicine and Queen sitting me down and spending an hour with me. And I don't think I'd ever met anyone as smart or as probing or as intellectually demanding as this guy. And I constantly felt on the defensive because at that point I got through mostly by bluff and waffle. And suddenly there was this guy saying, do you actually have any evidence for that? Can you give me an example where that could take place? Nice guy, very gentle, but asking really, really tough questions. Anyway, I was convinced after an hour of this that I'd screwed it up completely and they sent me home. A lot of the other people that were interviewing would get second interviews and third interviews, and they said to me, no, that's fine, you can go home then. So I wandered back to the train station, got the train back to Liverpool and thought, well, giving it a go. And I was then very surprised to get a phone call saying I'd been offered the place. I was a little bit wary about this, because my first thought was it's some mate of mine who's having a laugh and has got someone to phone me up and say you've got a place at Oxford. And then I got a letter from Queen's College. I thought, well, maybe this is real. And I arrived from the college and I kept this letter with me. Partly because I was expecting there to be some clerical error where it turns out that I hadn't got a place. I half expected to turn up at Queen's and then to say, no, it's his Stuart Edwards we were going to give a place to, not Nicholas. I'm very sorry, you're going to have to go home again. So I kept this letter with me. And I then realised that a lot of people at Oxford also suffered from this imposter syndrome, where they felt, I'm actually not worthy of all this great centre and great tradition, and I'm going to get found out sooner or later. And for me, it was the examinations when I thought, I'm going to get found out. And in Oxford, we have this outfit called sub-fuss, which is a white shirt and white bow tie and suits and gowns, and you can wear all this stuff when you go to the exam. And I can remember I'd taken the written exam, and then I had applied the boat shape, in other words, an oral exam. It was in the middle of summer, it was very hot, and I had to wear my sub-fuss, so I was over with a suit and tie and gowns. I went in, there were three very eminent Oxford professors. Being Oxford professors, they didn't just wear the normal black gowns, they had bright scarlet gowns with three hoods, and it was very intimidating. And it was the neuroscience. And they sat me down, they said, Mr. Edwards, calling yourself Mr. Edwards is like a mark of disrespect here. It's like it's trying to sound polite, but actually it's not. They said, Mr. Edwards, we were concerned about some of your knowledge about this neuroscience stuff. And I tried to waffle, but was completely unable to do so. And they said, would you like to tell us what you think the functions are of the basal ganglia? And I thought, so I started to waffle, and I said, well, there's a variety of different functions, and people have thought about different options, and there's quite a variety of different ways in which it could be. And they looked at me in astonishment, and all said, you actually know what the basal ganglia are? I said, yes, I think so. He said, fine. Can you give me an example of one of the basal ganglia? And I said, well, the red nucleus. He says, red nucleus? Red nucleus? And I thought, oh, this is it. I've been found out. I'm going to go after this. And then his colleague very kindly met over and said, actually, there was a paper by a group in the 1980s that did suggest that in environmental and evolutionary terms, the red nucleus could be considered on the basal ganglia. And the lead professor didn't miss a beat. He listened to this and he looked at me and he said, it's probably that paper that confused you, wasn't it? So yes, you realise these are nice guys and they're trying to get you through. They're trying to be helpful and supportive, not because they recruited you in the first place. And the traditional Don in Oxford is a rather eccentric character. One of the great eccentric characters is Dr. Spooner from Hugh College. They've heard of Spoonerisms, where people get their words mixed up. So instead of saying, you missed all my history lectures, you would say, you missed all my history. And one of the best stories that I've heard about him was he lived about 1960 to 1930. He was at a dinner in New College after the First World War, and one of the ex-students was sitting next to him. He said, oh, yeah, Jenkins, you and your brother were at college, weren't you? He said, yes. Tell me, was it you or your brother who was killed in the war? So I then proceeded into my clinical years, and I had great fun at the Radcliffe Infirmary, which is now closed down, and the Radcliffe Hospital, which is up on the hill, learning about medicine, dealing with patients, starting to move my way gradually into the real world. And one instance that I remember very clearly in my mind was when we had a ward round. And the ward round traditionally is where the postdoc, the professor, would go from patient to patient, and they would examine the patients and they would talk to the assembled group. And this was a neurosurgery ward. And the neurosurgeons, particularly prima donnas, they have great following. So there were about 20 people on this ward round following the great man around. And you had students, you had junior surgeons, you had physiotherapists, you had nurses, the whole series. And we came to a man of about 25, and there was a young doctor who would present the patient. She would say or handle the patient to the professor, who would then challenge them. And I remember I was standing in the back with a friend of mine, and we were listening to all this stuff, and the junior doctor was very nervous. He said, well, the patient is a 25-year-old man who's been in with blah, blah, blah. And the guy who's lying in the bed is listening to all this stuff, he's looking around at all these big bad people. And the professor says to her, interesting medical predictions. It often runs in families. Does it run in this young man's family? Trying to catch her out to see if she bothered to find out whether this condition could happen in early families. And she said, well, the patient was adopted. And the guy who's lying in the bed goes, what? And he was lying there, he reached up and grabbed her arm and said, what? That is what? And she looked at him, oh God, do you know? I was standing in the back with a friend of mine who went over to me and said, he knows now, doesn't he? So I then moved on. I started off at Queen's College, and then I went to a college called Green College. Now, Green was a real man, and he worked in the US Navy during the Second World War. And when he finished, he started a business called Texas Instruments and became very wealthy. And he donated what today is a moderate sum, around £5 million, to get Green College set up. And Green was specifically set up as a medical college. When I was a medical student, I thought, I'll write to this guy. Since I was going over to the States, I went to the States mostly to Harvard and Mass General and Union Medical Center and MIT and all that Boston cluster. But I also visited California and Pittsburgh, which were the other two big centers for AI research. And so I'd written to Cecil Green, who said, "You come out to see me. I live in La Jolla, come out and lunch." So I went out and had lunch with this delightful fellow. And when we finished the lunch, he said to me, "Would you like to see my hospital?" And I assumed he meant the hospital which he was treating. But he didn't, he meant the hospital which he bought. And so we go over and visit this huge hospital. And as we walk into the main entrance, the receptionist had obviously been crying when we arrived. And they jumped up and said, "Dr. Green, it's such a pleasure to see you. I'm sure the chief executive would like to come down and see you straight away. Do you know what this young fellow from Oxford is? Go show him my hospital." And then the CEO comes down and we get this great tour, which was fantastic. And we get in his car to go back. And as we're driving, he says, "Oh, would you like to see my Institute of Oceanography?" And the Scripps Institute of Oceanography on the cliff top, looking over the Pacific Ocean, was one that he funded. So we go through exactly the same thing, where we go over, people jump and they say, "Oh, Dr. Green, it's so nice to see you." And it was a great pleasure to meet Dr. Green, given his name to the Oxford College. And as I say, you've got a bit of a bargain of 5 million. The going rate now is 100 million. If any of you have got some spare chairs and would like an Oxford College named after you, they are very happy to do that for £100 million. Of course, it was a bit lower in the early days, and I don't know how much Jesus had to pay for his college. So when I finished my medical school, decided that I was interested in business. I wasn't really sure exactly what business was. And I got very interested in computers and AI through my visit to the States in 1985. So I then started to work for an American company called Arthur Anderson, then became Anderson Consulting at Accenture, and spent 18 years with them, doing a lot of work in Europe and the States, a lot of work in pharmaceuticals, pharmaceutical consulting. And then in 2005, our family decided to locate out of London. So we moved back to Oxford. We were thinking of move out to one of the counties, but Oxford is this great city that I enjoyed and I wanted to be part of again. So we moved back to Balls Hill, which is about 3 miles southwest of the city, and have been here ever since. So this means that returning, I have become town rather than Yao. And I don't know if you've heard about this, but there's a big distinction here between town and Yao. Oxford is obviously dominated as a city by the university, but there are other people who live in Oxford who aren't necessarily part of the university at all. There are plumbers and electricians and people who work in shops and restaurants. And there's a community of people who are called town versus Gown. Now, it's not the right term, of course, because Oxford isn't a town, Oxford is a city. And equally, Gown is becoming a little bit archaic. In the old days, students would wear gowns all the time. They had to wear gowns in order to identify them as students. These days, they're worn at matriculation when you start your university career, when you're given a degree, or when you're taking exams. You don't generally wear gowns. But I've gone from this gown to town transition. And it turns out that in 1209, there were 2 students that were lynched by a group of townies. And that prompted a group of academics to leave Oxford and go and set up a rival university in a place called Cambridge. And I don't know what's happened to that institution. I don't think anyone's really heard about that organization before. But I jest, of course, because Oxford's Cambridge is the mirror image of Oxford and became a great competitor. In a way, it was one of Oxford's first and most successful spin-outs. But the town I think most people know about is the thing called St. Scholastica's Day. And in St. Scholastica's Day was in February of 1355. And what happened was in a pub near Carfax, some students got into an argument with the landlord about the quality of wine that was being provided. And this got out of hand and it started fighting. It led to 3 days of riots. And what happened was that the town people were reinforced by people from the surrounding countryside that heard there was a bit of an argument going on, an opportunity for a little bit of violence, and came into Oxford and joined in these riots. And there were 60 students killed. There were 23 town people killed. So this is a very significant bit of violence. If you look back to the old days and they said, people had this kind of violence in the old days. Actually, they did. They were pretty ruthless about that level of violence. And of course, Oxford in those days was much smaller. I looked up the population of Oxford. If you look at 1066 and the Northern invasion, it was about 5,000 people. In 1377, when they did the survey for the poll tax, there were 3,500 people. Because of course, a lot of people had died in the Black Death. So you can estimate that in 1355, it would be about 3,500 people. And to have 80 or 90 people killed in a series of riots and battles, lots of people injured, was quite a big thing. So the government then tried to build bridges between the university and the town. And so the mayor of the town, the leader of the town, became honorary members of the university, and the university became honorary members of what the equivalent was of the council. So I've tried to make this transition. The other transition I've made is the transition into old age. And I wouldn't claim to have much wisdom, but I would claim to have some perspective now that I think back to what's happened in my life and the different influences. But the funny thing about old age is it kind of creeps up on you, and it's really weird finding yourself the same age as old people. And it's the little things that start to stick in your mind. I was on a tube train the other day, busy tube train, and someone I was standing up, and someone was sitting down who said something here, and he was offering me a seat. And whilst it was a very kind gesture, I suddenly felt quite insulted and nervous and awkward at the fact that not only was I old, I was quite obviously old. The other great transition that I've had is when people talk to me in the past, they say, oh, we're going to get chatting about families. They say, do you have any children? I say, yeah, I've got children. Nowadays, they say, oh, have you got any grandchildren? But now I can say yes, because I do have a grandchild who was born a month ago here in Oxford. And I was walking down the street, and one of my neighbours yelled out, hello, Grandad. And at first I thought they're just insulting me, because looking at kids, if they see someone old, they say, ah, Grandad. But then I realised actually what they would do was congratulating me on the birth of my granddaughter. So, what is it about Oxford that has inspired me? And I think about Oxford as, in this context, Oxford University. I think there are three things. The first is the devotion to critical thinking. And I go back to the interview that I had when I was intellectually analysed and torn apart and challenged. I go back to thinking about the tutorials that I had. And part of the Oxford system is that you sit down and have lectures and you listen, all this information coming in, you absorb it, you might remember some of it and you write it down. But also central to this is at least once a week you have a tutorial with a small number of people in medicine for 3 or 4 of us, and you sit down with the tutor and he would ask you to prepare some materials and he would ask you about those things. It's quite intimidating because you're in a very small group, there's nowhere to hide, and you're being challenged and asked some quite interesting and challenging questions. And I think the first major thing that inspired me about Oxford was the amount of expertise and depth and knowledge that there was around this place. I think that's particularly relevant today because it feels like there are a lot of challenges to the world faces that require some knowledge and expertise. And I'm old-fashioned and think that there are things as facts, and that there is truth, and there's things which are not true. And when you look at issues like global warming and vaccines, people have different views. There is actually quite a big body of evidence, and if you want to have a discussion and debate about it, I think there is an obligation to get up to speed on what has already been done and thought about, and being able to have an intelligent conversation as opposed to just expressing a view. And I think there's a confusion that has arisen because there are certain things where you and I can have quite legitimate different views. I like anchovies. You don't like anchovies. You can live together. You've just got different views. I'm not right. I'm not wrong. You're not right or wrong. I like Mozart. You prefer Beethoven. That's all fine. However, when it comes to serious public policy issues like vaccines and global warming, you can't just say, well, that's my opinion. Because there is a body of knowledge and expertise, and there are some things which are right and some things which are wrong. And it's always surprising when I hear people say, I know the evidence isn't there, but I believe X. It just sounds weird. It sounds like real cognitive dissonance. Even people who say, I know all the scientific evidence is against X, but I choose to believe it. Why would you choose to believe something which there isn't evidence for, or even worse, choose to believe something which is not actually true? And I think there's also a great tendency, because of what's happened since I was a student, around social media. And when I was watching the development of the internet, World Wide Web, mobile phone technology, I thought this is great. It's going to lead to people being able, on their phone, to access the sum total of human knowledge and wisdom. They can listen to the best minds in the world, the greatest thinkers, the greatest lecturers. And of course, partly for commercial reasons, we've ended up with social media. It doesn't do that at all. what happens is it just reinforces people's prejudices. And it's very easy if you've got a particular view to say, I'll go and look on social media on the internet and I'll find a lot of people agree with me, so that feels comfortable. Whereas actually what people should be doing is going out and finding people that disagree with them and being put to that level of discomfort. And I think part of the problem is we come in with a lot of prejudices. And I remember someone saying, one of the great things about an Oxford education is it teaches you to tell when the other man is speaking rot. In other words, it doesn't matter what degree subject you happen to study, what you'll be able to do is to think about whether their argument hangs together, whether they've got evidence, whether they're convincing, whether they've thought about it and counterfactual and other points of view. And I think that that is hugely important to be able to overcome some of our prejudices and enable us to really examine a lot of key questions today that are heavily dependent upon particularly scientific and to some sense economic knowledge. So critical thinking is something which I think has helped me throughout my career. And I look back to my Oxford experience as something which has helped me to adopt that level of critical thinking and to be suitably skeptical and to be suitably cynical about some of these things. The second big thing that happened to me in Oxford was driving mutual respect. Because when I was at school, I quite liked the sciences. I spent a lot of time with science people. But I thought a lot of the other subjects were a waste of time. I hated history. I was really put off Shakespeare at school. I terribly hated it. And then I arrived in Oxford and I found there are people that are very passionate about these subjects. And the advantage of the college system was that you deliberately mix up people from different disciplines. So I was the Greens, there were other people in my year, were 4 medics, and the rest of them were other subjects. And so the people that you ate with, the people that you socialised with, were people with very different views. And it opened up my world of presenting these different perspectives. And I was astonished to find people who really loved Shakespeare, whose great mission was to put on Shakespeare plays or to act in Shakespeare. And they said, well, come on, we were putting on a Shakespeare play in the Oxford Garden. And I thought this was pretty impressive that a bunch of students can actually memorise all these parts and then put on a Shakespeare play. And I went along and I started to enjoy it. And I love Shakespeare today. We are only a few miles south of Stratford-upon-Avon, where there's the great Shakespeare Centre, the Royal Shakespeare Company. And we go there very frequently for Shakespeare plays, and I enjoy them all. The only one I have a slight problem with is Macbeth. And the reason for that is because that's the one they taught me at school for my mandatory Shakespeare. And it was so badly taught, it almost put me off. But I love the Shakespeare plays now. And after I left Oxford, I then practiced medicine, and the practice of medicine is a very global community. People have the same bodies and the same illnesses around the world, and the medical profession is very well networked across the world. So what overcame a lot of these forces of nationalism and these differences was a common approach to how you started to build those communities. And a lot of academic groups like that, where they have very strong global connections. I then went on to work for Anderson Consulting or Accenture, which is a big global company. Whilst it was based in the United States, it had people in different countries. So as I moved around, did projects with people from other countries, I started to appreciate these people very similar to me. They had similar backgrounds, similar interests, and they were colleagues. So it helped me to move away from that kind of nationalistic, we're British and they're French and they're Germans approach. Similarly, the pharmaceuticals, the industry I've spent a lot of my career on, these are global companies that know that they develop a drug, they want to be able to market it in lots of different countries. And so they collaborate globally. And I always feel nervous and unhappy when I hear the forces of nationalism saying this country is good, your country is not good. We're a very tribal natured group of people. I think this goes back to when we were evolving, like in the Stone Age, and you lived in a small village and you had to be wary of the people in the next village because given the chance they would come along and rob you. So you felt a strong binding to your community, which is a good thing. The problem is that if you bind yourself to your community, you end up creating others and different communities. And it seems to me that one of the ways that Oxford, to me, was to bring together people from different perspectives and different backgrounds. They had this great program of Rhodes scholarships. Now, Cecil Rhodes is like a controversial figure, and there's been a lot of issues in the last few years about whether that name is appropriate and what is Cecil Rhodes do. But if you leave that aside, what it meant was that smart people from around the world could come to Oxford, spend time doing degrees. I thought that was great. And when you look at particularly the postgraduate groups within Oxford, it's in a very global community. And for me, I was interested to meet people who weren't from Liverpool. It was great to see people from different parts of the United Kingdom. Even greater to see people from other parts of the world. So, I think Oxford secondly was helping with mutual respect and recognition for people in different disciplines. The third thing that I think Oxford did was help me think about data and knowledge, and then how do you start to gather, collate, and communicate that information and knowledge. So not only do you do research to discover new knowledge, you have to teach other people, you have to communicate to them, but then what do you do about the repository of human knowledge? Now, throughout most of the last 1,000 years, the major vehicle for doing that has been the book. And that's why Oxford is full of books. We've got the Oxford University Press, the biggest university press in the world, the biggest book shop in the world. We've got big libraries like Bodleian, and each college has got these fabulous libraries. Now, clearly things are changing now, and the role of the book, the management of knowledge, is different now that we live in the internet age. But I think what Oxford did for me was help to think about how do you actually express yourself and how do you communicate? Now, as a medical student, the easy way for them to do exams would be to give us multiple choice questions about what is the dose of amlodipine, 5 milligrams, 25 milligrams, 50 milligrams, and tick off the right one. And a lot of medicine is like that in terms of examinations. But what Oxford did quite deliberately was engage in essays. So they would ask a question, often a deceptively easy question, and you'd have to write an essay for it. So even though we were medical scientists, we weren't fancy wordsmiths like all of you. We were just tongue-tied, simple scientists. We would be given an essay. Write an essay on the function of the knee, on why do heart attacks occur. And you'd have to write out, think about your English. At the time, it seemed a little bit odd, but I think it was a very good way of helping us to think about how do you actually go about communicating these things, and how do you put together your thoughts in order to be able to convince other people. And in fact, it was like that with the entrance exam that I took in 1978 when I wanted to apply to Oxford, and in the finals that I took when I was taking my degree. And interestingly, I got the same question in my entrance exam as I got in my final exam. It was a question that was something like, describe how cells divide. And I went to see my tutor and I said, it's funny, I got the same question in the entrance exam as I got in the finals. And my tutor looked at me and said, I do hope you were rather better in the finals than you were in the entrance exam. I think with clinical medicine as well, it became clear that how you communicate things is hugely important. It's well known that when doctors talk to patients, particularly if you're passing on bad news, a lot of that doesn't get properly passed on, and doesn't get properly remembered. We do a lot of these studies to say nobody will remember 20%. This is a very pressure-based environment, and you're being told difficult news. So there's now a big effort amongst the medical profession to think about medical communications and how is it that you tell patients things, that you write it down. Because again, you have the pleasure or the curse of the internet, which is there is widespread information available, some of which is very strong and valid, some of which is absolutely rubbish, and some of which is actually very dangerous rubbish. And I can remember when I was practicing as a doctor, there was a young boy who came in for a routine operation. I said to the parents, is there any medical condition? I said, no, thanks, fine. I said, there are no medical conditions that we need to be aware of. I said, no, it's fine. So I did the blood test, and it came out that he had sickle cell anemia. So I thought, I have to wait till the parents. Yeah, he's got sickle cell anemia. So I sat him down. I said, you know, we've done a blood test, and all we found is that your son's got sickle cell anemia. And they said, oh yeah, we know that. He's got that. And I said, oh, well, why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you mention it? Oh, we didn't really think about it. And again, it's very hard to think about how do you get the right information for that. I remember we had a doctor from New Zealand, and when it came to discharging patients, it was always a little bit problematic because you go around and say to the patient, you're done very well, you can go home to die. I also learned at the time that it's very important how you answer questions, and making sure that whilst I'm a very direct and blunt person, sometimes you need to be a little bit more sensitive. You need to make sure you're saying things which are not only true, but which are diplomatic. So, for example, when my wife says to me, does the stress make me look fat? I know that this is a dangerous question for you.
You said,
Now, the true answer is no. It's your fat that makes you look fat. But I think perhaps I learned to just stop at the no. So, what is Oxford University, I think, to me, at its best, and why is it an important institution in the world today? I think, first of all, it's about critical thinking and truth and knowledge and facts. I think, secondly, it is about tolerance and mutual understanding and collaboration across the world. And then I think, thirdly, it's about the use of that knowledge. It's how do you store that knowledge? How do you communicate it? And how do you exploit it? One of the things that I've done is help think about how do you take some scientific and medical advances and turn them into successful businesses and commercial success that creates some wealth. I think Oxford as an institution is starting to get better with all of that. So I hope you've enjoyed your 10 days in Oxford, and I hope you have felt inspired, not by me, but by Oxford as an institution. I think for wordsmiths to come to Oxford, where there's been so much contribution to the English language from the Oxford English Dictionary, which is a fascinating story and stuff, to the many authors and storytellers that have lived in and worked in this city, I think ought to be very inspiring as a great place to visit. So I hope you've enjoyed your time. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for inviting me. I hope that you'll come back to Oxford.
thank you so much, Nick. You know, I wanted to give Nick a gift, but I don't know Nick, and not personally, and so I asked for some advice, because it seemed to me like, okay, he's a very intelligent man, and he's been around the world, and so what do I get him? And a book was suggested to me, and so what did you want to know? And Andrew suggested, well, you know, a book by an author, suggested an author that has a lot of deep thinking, it's spirited, it's challenging, and I really was thinking that would really be adventure. So I got the book, and it's written by me. The Secret and the Mark, Everyday Conversations with Tom Smith.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. It helps say very modest of you. I trust it in signed and
Thank you. Okay, so it is now time for the presentation of the diplomas. We will present by genre. We will announce the student's name. You will hear an excerpt from their prerequisites read by our faculty, James Daniels and S. Kirk Walsh, and I will invite him to come to the podium. And then the student will come up to receive the reading. And evidently it will be by genre. First will be the genre of creative nonfiction, read by James Daniels. Katerina Thomas.
It's an excerpt from her manuscript Final Life. Dear Dad, you stayed at my house in Boston. You know that planes usually fly overhead, coming into land from all over the world. I haven't heard the song of a plane in a long time. The sound of the car engine passing by is becoming increasingly rare. The birds haven't stopped singing, but their voices seem quieter. I went to a talk on Zoom today called "What's It Like to Be a Bird?" And I learned that just as we raise our voices in loud pubs and restaurants, birds increase their singing volume to be heard by other birds over the noise of human traffic. And this time, they're singing more softly. When I go out in nature, I walk for you too, as if the genes shared by fathers and daughters can stretch across ocean. I wondered, Matt, did they tell you anything your family might need to know about the possible genetic link of the leukemia?
Katerina Thomas. next reader for fiction will be Esther Walsh. Sarah Geddes Carroll.
From her novel Shoving It. I eat with relish. The baby will wake soon. I will give him to William while I finish the evening work. William will make him verbal and food. Then it will be night. I will wash and bundle him in a fresh blanket, nurse him to sleep, fall asleep myself. I never know whether he will wake in the night to nurse again. Some nights he blissfully sleeps through, nestled low between my belly and my long, cradling arms, the dear little one. Other nights are harder and I get little sleep. I begin to lose myself in the care of him. Yet there is no time nor energy to contemplate this loss, to grieve it. I think of the mama bear with her cub, her ferocity in the care of him. Does it come from love or lack of sleep? The writer, Sarah Geddes.
Our next is actually in the United States. And it's Kayla Williams.
From her excerpt, an excerpt from her novel, The Heart's Up. Just for a moment, I stand on the porch and enjoy the silence. Though the thrill of the fight powers me, I savor moments like this where I am still. When I can smell the sweetness in the air and the freshness recharges me. It reminds me I'm alive, that the bright, magical energy flowing through the lands sustains me and keeps me going. Taking a breath of clean air, I look up at the star-filled sky, feeling like more than just an inhabitant of this world. I am part of it, one with the vibrant essence of it all. I crave these peaceful moments of connection, just like I do the thrill of taking down a beast 10 times my size. The writer, Kayla Williams.
Congratulations, Kayla.
Thank you.
And now, the genre of poetry, read again by Jim Daniels. Callius Lewis.
It's Callius Lewis from their poetry collection, Ephemeral Garden. Puppy Love. Tail thumping against the ground like the dog I am. I wait for my owner to come home. That lolling to one side, his footsteps pass by outside. I'm lying. How could I not miss this? The lovedness stain my entire being. The way my fur shone from their hands, taking time to scrub shampoo into the roots, or how my stomach expanded through fried egg sandwiches covered in butter and pesto. My loyalty paid through my pink tongue. I can never stop waiting for that love to come back. Locked behind the door, they slip through. Can't chase it like the pheasant-scented bird or a squirrel in my hand, or on my land. So I tilt my head the other way, ears perking up the sound of keys in the lock. Writer Callius Lewis.
We have another round of applause for that. So just a note about what will happen next. This concludes the program, and Drew will come up to deliver the benediction. And I ask that you allow our students and faculty to recess out so they can line up to receive your good wishes as you leave. I end with this reminder that I like to give all writers, and that is that if you don't do the work that you are meant to do, then we lose out because we miss the opportunity to be changed by your vision and your talent. So I offer this blessing, which some of you will recognize, because I like to do it, from my favorite saint, Bruce Springsteen. May your faith give us faith. May your strength give us strength. May your hope give us hope. May your love bring us love. Thank you, everyone. And now, you're down.
Well, friends, we are offered a gift to joy in the creation of worlds, inspiring whimsy or terror, sorrow or elation. And each of us has been charged with work knowing the brioche is out there, that the visitor has the clearest eye, as we spy the kaleidoscope of truth, that the container of life may be slippery or commercial or romanticy or survival, but this is our work, human work. This is our world, and we make it ever more beautiful together. So may the spirit that drives you draw us together. May the spirit that challenges you inspire us all. May the spirit that loves you breathe life into the world. And may we all know grace and peace, justice and wholeness with incredible joy now and always. Amen.